And we are live with today's SY0-701 Security Plus Study Group. It's our pre-show where I make sure that everything is working, so to speak. Everything seems to be working this morning, which often makes me uncomfortable. Everything seems to be doing exactly what I need it to do, which I think is lulling me into a false sense of security. That's how it always goes. Then it bites you. But so far, so good. We got about 10 minutes before we get started. This is our pre-show, so recordings are going. You can see my Cylons there. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Glad to see you there. Videos look good. Camera feeds. Let's get our laptop up. There it is. Ding. That looks good. And I think we're in okay shape. I think YouTube is not down like it was yesterday. Although I don't think any of the live stuff was affected by the homepage being down. I think that was somebody. So if you're looking for a position, there are some that opened up last night when YouTube went down. I'm sure something happened there. I think it was more of a coding issue though. That didn't seem to be IT related, but who knows? We'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes. Oh, we got a lot to go through today. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We're doing all Security Plus today. I have new questions, new performance-based. We've got lots to go through. Oh, I guess I could put up there it is, lower third, so you can actually get in and not only put your digital pin in our virtual pin cushion here for where you happen to be in the world, and you can see that other people have started to do that right now. If you look over my shoulder there. But it also is the link you go to if you would like to leave a question for the after show. And you can leave questions at any time during the first hour and really any time during the second hour as well. So the earlier you get the questions in, though, the more likely I'm going to see them first because the first ones are at the top of the list and it goes down from there. Not really rocket science on that one. They have to be in some type of order, right? So that's the order that they are in. We got a lot to go through today. Lots of good stuff happening with Security Plus. The thing about IT security is that it never is still. It's never not doing something. Something is always happening security wise. So this is a really good example of that. Okay, I have a lot here that I need to check on, but everything seems to be okay. Would I recommend someone start with these live streams or start with the videos on your channel? I think starting with the video series and getting the basics down would be useful because all of the questions that we asked today are asking you about things you learned when you were going through the course. So it doesn't hurt to be here, however. I just feel like a lot of the answers you're going to get, you will not know about. You'll not understand this. So it won't make any sense to you. And so you won't be able to absorb it. And then that won't be any good for you. So having some level of that would be good. Now, the after show, the second hour, absolutely. This would be a great place to be. Nothing that you would need to worry about there. Professor Messer, do you feel the exams get harder as they get closer to expiration, or is that a myth? It's funny because I have people all the time send me messages saying, I heard the exams get really hard as you get close to expiration. And then I get other messages from people that say, I heard the exams get much easier as you get closer to expiration. They don't change. The exams do not change closer to expiration. Why would they be spending time modifying an exam that is about to retire and make it more difficult than the people who took it the previous 3 years? That doesn't even make sense. Now, in this case, it doesn't matter because Security Plus isn't going to retire anytime soon. This same version of Security Plus will still be around a year from now. So we're not even close to talking about retirement for A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus at the moment. They're all pretty much ready to go for the next year. But they don't change as you get closer to expiration. They're busy working on the new exam. Why would they go back and change the old exam? That makes no sense. Plus, why would you change it because of the time frame? So I don't know. How do you feel about the SecAI Plus that was just announced? I don't really. I've looked at some of it, but It doesn't, there's no appeal there. There's no demand for it at the moment. I'm sure that there will be some. It's not a certification. It's a certificate you get for taking the class. You don't go to a testing center and take the exam. So there's no exam certification that you have to pass. So it has limited credential functionality there. Plus, really, SecAI, really, that's what we're doing. So here's and I'm sure at some point there might be a need for some of that. I think an exam that helps us secure our networks from AI, that's valuable. That we could work on, because there's enormous problems associated with that. That might be something to think about. But I don't see, there's not a lot of people clamoring for that from my perspective. There might be over on the CompTIA side, but for what we are doing here, no, it's the exam objectives are good. The exam objectives are fine. You can download them, have a look at them. It is a legitimate certificate that you can get. You're learning stuff from it. But I'm sure there is a segment of folks who need that AI fundamentals and AI foundation, and that addresses that for them. But that is such a small, insignificant, from my perspective, such a small number that it's just not on my radar at the moment. But as I've mentioned often, these things change constantly, sometimes day to day. So next year, you can ask me the same question. I'll go, oh, yeah, it's fantastic. But right now, no, it's not doing it for me. Not really something I'm working on anyway. I got stuff to do, and that's not it right now. We have some non-AI related actual real content that affects everyone that we're going to talk about today. So that's where I tend to focus, is on the legitimate side of things. I don't tend to focus on, if you can show me a problem that we're solving, I can get on board with that. But until we have that, I don't have much I can do with it. That's more of an investment problem, I guess. Pretty much everything. Do I think 801 will contain AI material? Well, the current A+ already has AI nomenclature and a section on AI, so you can understand what the fundamentals are, understand some of the terms that are used, understand when you're talking to those AI-minded people, you can have a conversation with them. And the 801 exam objectives, I've already have access to those. I'm already working on the 801 exam for next year. Not working very hard, because that's something for end of this year, beginning of next. Do I think that cyber jobs will be replaced by AI? How's it going so far? Not really happening. Again, if you can show me an example of a problem that's being solved, then that would be very helpful. But I haven't seen those yet. That's the problem right now. I think that's the problem that all companies are sort of seeing with AI. We'll replace it, and we'll put an AI bot on our site. Well, it turns out the AI bot doesn't help you. It actually is, it hurts you. It's a waste of time. It doesn't really solve any problems. So therefore, we're not really all that excited about it. That was what you came up with? All the billions of dollars poured into AI. What do we get? An AI customer service bot that doesn't know anything. Okay, that's not a good start. We got to really work on this if it's going to be viable. So everybody's watching and waiting for that one. But this falls into that category of, now that we have the iPad, no one will ever have a desktop or a laptop computer again. I know some of you remember this. So this you have to really take these things in a practical view. So right now, it's not very practical. We will figure it out as we go and see how things work. But for the moment, there's not much to talk about there. The Emperor still doesn't have any clothes on, and we're still waiting for him to get some clothes on. Hey, Emperor, go get some clothes, buddy. I'm sure it will be good. What I'm really expecting to see is a lot of companies taking write-offs over the investments they made in R&D on AI. That's the next step in this. They just threw their investors' money into this, hoping that something would be there, and I don't know that anything is there yet. But maybe they'll figure it out. I'm open. Let's see if they can come up with something that will make that work. In the meantime, not so much. Okay, and this is good. I got a message on my screen. Does that go away if I turn this on? Yes, it does. All right. Well, at least I got that going for me. Top of the line, everybody. Let's see if we can get the keynote going. I need this a little bit closer so I'm not leaning over the whole time. And look at that. We got a green light. Does it play? It does play. That looks good. That does look good. Okay. Can we go back with this? We can. It's top of the hour. Let's see if we can get a live stream going. Let's see if I know what buttons to push, and we'll make this happen. Here we go, everybody. We're going to put that there. We're going to put this here, and we'll do a live stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the February 2026 SY0-701. This is our Security Plus study group coming to you live from our studios here. This is a chance for this live stream for me to ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And hopefully you're one of the folks that is well-versed in all things Security Plus related. And if you are, you're probably going to do pretty well today. We're going to find out because I have all new questions for you that are both multiple choice, performance-based questions. We have your questions that we will answer in our after show. There's a lot that we're going to do today. We have quite a bit to go through. One of the things that I will remind you that if you are here live, you can join in and interactively answer the questions that I will pose for you today. This is the link that you will need. It's the one on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Unfortunately, this link is only available if you are here live. And why aren't you here live? If you're listening to this on the replay, you might want to join us sometime. We'd love to have you. If you'd like to know when the next live event is going to be, you can always check our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. So if you go to that link, there will be a question waiting for you. That question is this one. This is a question. This is the only time you're going to get a question that is one from a previous study group. We call this our rewind question. If you were here last month, you might remember this one. Let's see how well you might know this one. The one rule that we have for the entire study group, please keep this in mind, is that I'm going to pose this question to you and the potential answers, and I'll give you links that you can use to answer this, but please do not put your answers into the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat room. The question that we have is, a company uses many different security tools from different manufacturers, but they use a standard protocol to automate security responses between the systems. Which of the following would best describe this protocol? Is it 802.1x, Kerberos, PKI, OSINT, or SCAP? So we have a few things to choose from there. Now, if you know what the answer is, again, you go to the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. And if you are answering there, it will lock in your answer. We will come back to this question in just a moment. So stick around for the answer. In the meantime, I want to remind you that we do one of these study groups every month. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, when we're not doing a live stream, our entire Security Plus course is available online for you to watch at professormesser.com/YouTube. And we also have a weekly pop quiz question. We're looking to move that to a daily pop quiz question. So if you are not on board with our Q&A, that might be something you'd like to do. You can find question and answers at professormesser.com/X/Instagram/LinkedIn. I'll email them to you directly. There's lots you can do. You can find out more information on those directly on our website as well. The thing that we will be talking about today is Security Plus. The current status, the current state of the Security Plus exam is right here on this one screen. So the current version of the Security Plus exam is numbered the SY0-701. This is an exam that was released on November the 7th of 2023, which means if we do the math, if CompTIA stays with their standard set of scheduling that they have done for the past, 20 years, then the estimated retirement for this exam will be May of 2027. So as we sit here in February of 2026, you can see that you have more than a year to complete your studies for the SY0-701. You're in the perfect place and the perfect time frame to be working on this exam because there are so many study materials available. You've got lots of resources to pull from. And of course, we have plenty of SY0-701 study materials on our website. The exam is a single exam, thankfully, So when you walk into that exam, you will have 90 minutes to complete what could be as many as 90 questions. That is the maximum you might get, but you could get fewer than 90 questions. In fact, you'll probably get fewer than 90 questions on your exam, but they could ask you up to 90. The exam score that you're looking for is on a scale from 100 to 900, and the version of this exam requires you to get a 750, a 750. That 750 points means that you have passed the exam and that you would now be Security Plus certified. The exam itself consists of mostly multiple choice questions. We just are starting one of those. But there are also a handful of questions at the beginning of the exam called performance-based questions. And we'll talk more about performance-based questions in just a moment. On our website, of course, our entire Security Plus course is free for you to watch. Every video, every minute of every video is out there on our YouTube channel. You don't have to register. You don't have to do anything special. You simply go to ProfessorMesser.com and you can watch the entire index. Of course, we have course notes, practice exams, and other study materials on our website that can help you. If you'd like to see other tools that might help you get over that passing number, you can check those out at ProfessorMesser.com/701 SB. That's 701, our success bundle. That's what that SB is for. So have a look at that. There might be things there that could help you get over that hump and earn your Security Plus exam. Of course, this live stream is available for replay immediately afterwards on our YouTube channel. We also create an audio-only version of this that we distribute in podcast format. That version is available at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. So go to your favorite podcast listening program. We may already be in their index, so all you have to do is search for Professor Messer, or you can add it by going to the links that are at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. Also let you know that the replays of this on YouTube are available. And about a day after you're done, or we're done with this live stream, you'll notice that timestamps will appear in the YouTube video description telling you exactly what we have talked about and the questions and the answers. So it's a way to help maybe speed up the process of learning some of the things that you did today. You can find out more about that on our YouTube video description. These don't appear automatically. These are added by our marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this replay and putting all of those timestamps in so that you can find what you need that much faster and you can earn your Security Plus certification with as little trouble as possible. So that is at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. Also let you know that when we're not here on a live stream, I'm usually hanging out in our Discord. You can find out more at ProfessorMesser.com/Discord because there are thousands of people on our Discord that are studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other certifications. And sometimes we're just talking about technical things. And what is this wire? And what is this connection that I have found at work? These are interesting challenges because there's a lot of different types of configurations. And it's nice to have a group of people that can work on some of these problems all together. That's at ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. And you'll be able to join us over there. Also let you know that eventually you will need to take your Security Plus exam. And if you are in the US or Canada, you might want to have a look at our website because I have discounted vouchers on my website. Those vouchers have a significant discount over the ones you'll find on the CompTIA website. Sure, you could go over to the CompTIA website and pay full price, but why would you do that when I have these vouchers available on my site? Not only do you get the vouchers at a discount, you also get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook where I created a list of all of the tips and tricks that I could think of that I have used through the years to study for CompTIA exams. These are things that can not only help you during the study process, there are also some tips and strategies I put into the Exam Hacks ebook that you can use during the exam itself. So this is something just added for free. So by getting the voucher on my site, not only are you saving money, you're also getting some useful tips for your exam. Find out more about that at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's look at the question I asked earlier. A company uses many different security tools from different manufacturers, but they use a standard protocol to automate security responses between the systems. Which of the following would best describe this protocol? Would it be 802.1x, Kerberos, PKI, OSINT, or SCAP? Well, let's stop the poll. Let's close it up and see what you answered for this one. 61% of you, a better number than we got last month, say the answer is SCAP, and you'd be right. SCAP is the standard protocol that we are looking for. It would not be 802.1x. 15% of you chose that one. 10% said OSINT, and then single digits, 8% for Kerberos and 7% for PKI. The Security Content Automation Protocol, SCAP or SCAP, doesn't really matter how you say it. We often will use different terms or different pronunciations of terms, especially those that are abbreviations. Don't worry too much about that. It's common in the industry. And this was created to address this challenge of having so many different devices looking at security, so many different aspects of security there. We need some standard way for all of these different, very diverse devices created by different manufacturers to somehow be able to communicate with each other. And so SCAP is a great way to do that. It's going to provide some type of automation. We can do a lot of great capabilities using these standard protocols. This is one that is important to know, especially since it is in the 701 exam objectives. And it's important to know because you might run into this or need to use this as part of your daily job when working in IT security. Now, why wouldn't it be 802.1x? We got 15% of you. 802.1x is an authentication protocol. Has nothing to do with diverse security devices being able to communicate with each other. So if you've ever logged into a wireless network before and it prompted you for a username and password, it was probably using 802.1x to do that. It probably even had behind the scenes some type of authentication protocol that it used. Kerberos is a good example of that, but Kerberos and 802.1x do not provide any integration between devices from different security manufacturers. We have 7% of you that said PKI, public key infrastructure. Public key infrastructures are great for maintaining security, certificates, private keys, and having a process and series of procedures to manage those. Has nothing to do with security devices communicating to each other. And open source intelligence is a great way to gather information about an attacker or a vulnerable site, but it doesn't help at all with getting all of these different security tools to talk to each other. The answer in this case, the one that most of you chose, 61% exactly chose it, was SCAP, the Security Content Automation Protocol. You got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's now that we've gone in and we know that we can answer these questions online on the links I provided, and we know that it's working the way we would expect, then we now need to answer a different kind of question we call a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are associated or have a format that is anything but multiple choice. That is how CompTIA defines a performance-based question. And because of that, it's almost impossible to come up with an exact structure of what you might expect on the exam because the structure could be anything. It could be a fill in the blank. It could be a drag and drop question. It could be a matching question. You might have to put things in a particular order when you are online. This is one of the challenges during the exam is that they could ask you any question in any style they would like. But the performance-based questions, as with the multiple choice questions, all come from the official exam objectives. So they're not asking you about something you don't know about. You already know all of this content. And that's why I often tell people, you don't need a standard format for your performance-based question. What you need is to know everything from the exam objectives, and then it doesn't matter how they ask the question. It could be multiple choice, it could be fill in the blank, it could be a drag and drop, it doesn't matter. You already know the answers because you know every topic from the official exam objectives. So I have for you today what effectively is, although on the exam they don't commonly provide a fill in the blank question, they do have a question that is, in this case, fill in the blank. So I'm making it a little bit harder than the actual exam in this case. You do need to know a little bit about this technology, but here is our performance-based question of the month. I want you to provide the authentication factor for each of these descriptions. So I have for you 6 different descriptions, and if you think you know what the answer is, and you'd like to be able to answer this online, you don't need any special codes, you don't need any special URLs. All you need is one single, very generic URL, professormesser.com/QA. That is the link you go to answer any of our questions here today. The 6 different descriptions I have for you, let's go through each one of these. The first one is A user unlocks their phone using a fingerprint scan. What is the authentication factor for that particular description? The next one is a customer inserts their debit card into an ATM to initiate a transaction. What authentication factor is being used there? A website asks, what's the name of your first pet? Got to know that one as well. Next on our list is a company restricts access to systems from corporate office IP addresses. Probably a pretty good idea, but what authentication factor is that? Next is a user unlocks their phone using the numeric key. A user unlocks their phone using a numeric passcode or alphanumeric code. That has to be some type of authentication factor, but what is it? And then lastly, an employee taps their access badge to enter a secured office building. Those are the 5 different authentication factors that we are looking for. I guess it would be good if I turned on your ability to answer the questions. Here we go. So now you can actually answer them online using the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. You can submit those questions or those answers to these at any time. And please remember what you put in as the answers when you submit them with this particular system that we were using from Vevox. It is one that has traditionally hidden the answers from you once you submit them. So keep in mind what you put in for each of these different settings. These are also questions and very common things you would find on a daily basis in your organization. And as an IT security professional, you need to understand what type of authentication factor is being used for this, because you might have a requirement to have secondary ones. Yeah, you're right. I do have different text that is on here. So some of you are even noticing, hey, why is the text different on this screen than the one that you have? Well, that's a fine question, sir. That's what. Let's see if I can edit on the fly. I bet I can. Let's see if it allows me to. We're gonna make it that way. That's how you know this is live, is because sometimes I just don't have my act together and give you the right information. It says and I'll have to type it out because I don't have it all listed. A customer inserts their debit card into an ATM to initiate a transaction. Transaction. There we go. It's all about the spelling, isn't it? Now it should look a little nicer on your screen. Now it matches everything. Now the world is as it should be. Everything. Do you hear? I hear angels singing. I hear there's a harp playing. Something is working the way it should. No, what would one of our live streams be if we didn't have one of those? Basically, that's not an excuse. That's just a factor. That's just a feature that we provide to you. It's a fact of life. Kind of how things go with this. Enter your authentication factors for each of these descriptions. This is a challenging question because I'm not giving you the list of authentication factors. You already have to know what those are. On your actual exam, this would be more of a drag and drop or maybe a pull down menu that you would choose, and the pull down would have the different options available to you. So this is one where I am making a little bit more difficult, but I think that most of you probably know what these authentication factors are. So I'm not only making sure you know what the authentication factors do, how they would be categorized, but I'm hoping you know what they are to begin with. Now, if you've never gotten to this section of the exam, you've never worked on this type of content, you may not know the answers to these, but that's okay. We're going to go through these step by step. And when we are done with this question today, you will be very familiar with all of these different authentication factors. Let's step through each one of these one by one and see what you added to. Well, we aren't going to see what you added to this, but you'll be able to see what you added to this and see if it's really what the answer should be. Let's start with the very first one, which is the authentication factor for a user unlocks their phone using a fingerprint scan. Yeah, we still have some of those phones around, so that's not too far beyond the scope of reality. So you're using your fingerprint. You're using part of yourself. So your authentication factor would be something you are. Whenever you're using a biometric, which would be something relating to you physically, then that is exactly what you would choose in this particular case. And so something you are describes this particular style or this particular type of authentication factor. Next one is A customer inserts their debit card into an ATM to initiate a transaction. And I went back and forth on this one. Some of you that saw the question that was online had a different authentication factor. This process actually is multi-factor, but I'm only asking you for one of the factors in this case because you are inserting your debit card. That's the only thing described on this particular line. It's something you have because you can't get the process started on an ATM, on most ATMs, until you have your ATM card with you, until you plug the card into the machine. Now, I realize there are some ATMs that have a different process. You may not need the card, but that wasn't this question. This question was you insert your debit card into the ATM to initiate a transaction. That is something you have because you have the card. Now, interestingly enough, there is another authentication factor used on an automatic teller machine, and that is putting in the digits that are on that ATM. So the digits on the ATM would not be something you have. That would be something you know, which is very similar to the next one that says a website asks, what was the name of your first pet? Now, your first pet, you may not even have your first pet with you any longer. The first pet doesn't have to be there for you to log in. You don't have to, hey, pet, come over here and type in the password. You don't need that. You just need to remember the name of your first pet. And because you're having to remember it, the only place that particular data exists is in your brain. This is something you know. So this is a website asks, what's the name of your first pet? It's asking you about things that you, and probably you and a very small group of people, are the only ones that would really ever know the answer to that question. So that is a very important one to use, but generally speaking, we don't tend to use those very broad types of questions to be able to validate and authenticate these days because it's now become just way too easy to find out the name of your first teacher, the high school mascot that you had. Those things are simple to find on the internet these days. We don't tend to ask that, generally speaking, unless we have additional authentication factors to go along with it. We talk about that a little bit in the Security Plus course and how we use different pieces of your past and use multiple instances of those to try to determine if you are really you. The next one on our list is a company restricts access to systems from corporate office IP addresses. This may be important if your organization has some very sensitive data and it wants to be sure that the only people able to see that data are people that are physically inside the building. So it has to have a corporate IP address on it. That would be somewhere you are, because you have to be in the building. That those private IP addresses that your company uses effectively allows them to understand where you are physically located. And I get it. There's remote desktop and there's other ways that this could be spoofed. That wasn't the question. This question was all about adding yet another factor to the authentication. And perhaps this factor is used in conjunction with other factors as well. In fact, with such private data, it's probably guaranteed there are multi-factors involved in this case. But the factor here is somewhere you are, because we are geographically locating you at least in an area that happens to be available. Next on our list is a user unlocks their phone using a numeric passcode or alphanumeric code. This is one where we're unlocking the phone. So the phone is not being used as the authentication factor. The things that you are typing into the phone are being used as the authentication factor. And because this is a numeric passcode, an alphanumeric code, or just a password in general, it's something that only you, hopefully, only you know. And that is the authentication factor we were looking here, is something you know. That something would be your numeric passcode or an alphanumeric code. And the last on our list is an employee taps their access badge to enter a secured office building. Something that happens thousands and thousands of times every day at many organizations. When you walk into the building, you tap your badge, the door opens, and you walk on through. That is, of course, because you have to have the badge to get through that secure room. Then we know that is something that you have with you. This badge probably has your picture on it, something you are. It probably has other information on it as well, so we can link that badge back to you. But the process of tapping it is the process of actually physically having the card with you as well. So those are the answers to our are authentication factors. A user unlocking their phone using a fingerprint scan is something you are. A customer inserting their debit card into an ATM to initiate a transaction is something you have. A website asking, what's the name of your first pet? It's asking about something you know. A company restricting access to systems from a corporate office IP address is limiting where this happens to be, so this would be somewhere you are. A company or a user unlocking their phone using a numeric passcode or alphanumeric code is something you know. And an employee tapping their access badge to enter a secured office building is something you have. So there are other authentication factors as well, but these are the only ones that are physically listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. So although you will certainly see other factors as you go through your career in IT security, the only ones we're focusing on for this exam are the ones that we have listed on the screen. And if you're ever wondering about the scope of some of these topics or how much we need to know about these topics, you can always go back to the exam objectives. And for example, the previous version of the Security Plus exam, the 601, had some additional authentication factors that they dropped for the 701. Makes it a little bit easier for you. So make sure you only study things that CompTIA needs you to study for this exam. It's not necessary to go adding on another 5 or 6 authentication factors because not very useful in this particular scenario. Let's see how we do with other questions. That's our performance-based question of the month, by the way. Thank you for joining us on this one and going through and answering some of those questions. Maybe you have a better idea now of multi-factor authentication, but if you don't, you can always watch our video. It's in section 4.6, and the name of that video is Multi-Factor Authentication. You did great on the performance-based question today. Let's do another multiple choice question today. The next multiple choice question says, which of the following would be the most likely method of identifying a potential SQL injection attack? Would it be MDM, WAF, DMARC, DLP, SSO? There's a few there to work through. The question again asks, which of the following would be the most likely method of identifying a potential squirrel injection attack? Is it MDM, WAF, DMARC, DLP, or SSO? Isn't that squirrel? I'm pretty sure it's squirrel. Again, you can say things different ways. Most of the time, you'll hear normal people say this as SQL or SQL, which is perfectly reasonable. If you do call this squirrel injection in a meeting, they will look at you unless you are probably south of the Mason-Dixon line, and then you're fine. Then it's all okay. We'll know exactly what you mean. We know exactly what you're talking about. If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no squirrels in the chat room. No, we can have squirrels in the chat room. I think that's fine. If you're a squirrel and you're in our chat room, perfectly fine. I'm happy with that. This is where you could go for all of your squirrel topics right here. This is also a good question because it is asking you not just about the way that these attacks work, but it's really asking you about how do these attacks hit us? Where does this come from? Why is this happening on this? So let's see if we can work through what the best way to identify this might be. A lot of you have already locked in your answers, so let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, which of the following would be the most likely method of identifying a potential SQL injection attack? Would that be MDM, WAF, DMARC, DLP, or SSO? We're going to close the poll and see how we did. There's one that got really a lot of answers. WAF got 59% of the possible answers here. We did get another double digits with data loss prevention. That's DLP. 17% of you did that over the WAF. We also have other options in here for 9% of you said DMARC, 8% said SSO, 7% said MDM. So with 59% saying a web application firewall, I think we can put our flag in and say, yep, that's absolutely the answer that we were looking for. a web application firewall, a WAF. This was not only a question about understanding SQL injections and where they come from, but it's also about mitigating them, preventing them, stopping them, and a lot of other abbreviations and acronyms that are on the screen. Web application firewalls, we call them firewalls, and they are firewalls, but they're really operating at the application level. And that's why the word application is really there in the name itself. This is not the traditional firewall that I think most people think about. It's not one that is blocking or allowing traffic based on a port number. It's not one allowing or blocking traffic ideally based on an application. This is about stopping bad content within the application itself. And it's not uncommon for organizations to have a traditional or next generation firewall on their network. So they might have a Palo Alto Networks firewall, but then they might also have a web application firewall. It's not incredibly common to see these integrated together, but often there's a little bit of overlap. If you were to look at, for example, a Palo Alto Networks firewall, it can look at some information and identify things like SQL injections, but a WAF, it is designed to do this. That's exactly what it does. So it's looking at the input into the application. It's looking at the output that's coming from the application. And one of the very big selling points for web application firewall is that it can identify and block SQL injections without having a specific signature. So it's just able to see those in real time as they're coming through. And if you're an organization that stores credit card information, you probably already have a WAF because it's one of the big requirements in the PCI DSS, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. So you probably have those. I had one customer that I worked with when I worked for a next generation firewall company that had two different next generation firewalls from two different manufacturers and two different WAFs from two different manufacturers. So they were trying to cover their bases. They were trying to make sure they got everything and blocked everything from the network. It might have been a little overkill, but maybe they were able to block more things than other folks did. This is the answer that we wanted, was the web application firewall. Now, what about these other answers that we have here? For example, 17% of you said data loss prevention. DLP is a way to look for and react to information going across the network that perhaps should not be there. So if somebody's transferring credit card information in the clear, they're transferring social security numbers in a zip file, DLP is a type of security platform solution, whether it's hardware or software, that can stop that from going through the network. We have mobile device managers, which are great for setting policies on mobile devices, but it doesn't have anything to do with blocking SQL injections. So that would not be the answer that we needed. 9% said DMARC. That is one of the many different methods that we can use to help prevent spam on your network, primarily designed to be an email security control, but has nothing to do with SQL injection. And lastly, single sign-on, although it makes it very convenient for logging into the network one time at the beginning of the day and not having to put your username and password in constantly throughout the day, single sign-on doesn't help with blocking SQL injection attacks. In this case, the only answer that really was the best one by far was a web application firewall. 59% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another one. Next on our list is this question that asks, a technician is concerned about security associated with the wireless handshake process. Which of the following would provide additional security for this process? Would it be IPsec, code signing, secure cookies, WPA3, or input validation? All important things to know about, all topics in the official CompTIA exam objectives, but only one that fits this particular scenario. Again, a technician is concerned about security associated with the wireless handshake process. Which of the following would provide additional security for this process? Would it be IPsec, code signing, secure cookies, WPA3, or input validation? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock that in. You could, of course, also follow along there, but please don't put any answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints into the chat. Chat, you're doing very well with that today. Thank you so much for doing that. It's always a little bit more fun if we try to figure out the answer on our own and then see what the answer happens to be. We've got a number of people that have already locked in their answer. I try not to look into the answer before we reveal it because I like to be just as surprised at the results as you are. Sometimes surprised, sometimes not surprised. We'll have to see what we think it is. Let's see how you did. The question asks, a technician is concerned about security associated with the wireless handshake process. Which of the following would provide additional security for that process? Is it IPsec, code signing, secure cookies, WPA3, or input validation? We will close our poll, and big numbers, 71% say it's WPA3, but 17% say IPsec would be the way to provide additional security. Then we have almost a three-way tie for third place. 4% said code signing, 4% said secure cookies, and 3% said input validation. Now, we have such a large number that I think we can pretty much lean on WPA3 as being the answer of what we were looking at here. But why would WPA3 provide any additional security for this wireless handshake process? This was an important addition to the latest version of this wireless encryption that we use on our networks, the WPA3. WPA3 changes this authentication process to be more of a mutual authentication. That's because the way that we were doing our authentication in the past is we were sending the hash of our authentication information across the network. Now, ideally, this is pretty secure. In fact, in most cases, this is super secure. So if you're running WPA2 today, you've still got a very good authentication process going there. But if someone happens to capture that hash and then brute force that hash information, they could potentially gain access to authentication credentials that you would not like them to have. So one of the things WPA3 does is add a new method of authenticating across the network called simultaneous authentication of equals, or SAE. This is very similar to Diffie-Hellman and the way it works, because we can have a private or passcode type key that we're creating on both sides of the conversation without having to send that key across the network. It's cryptographic magic, really, in the way that this works. You might hear this referred to as the dragonfly handshake. That's kind of fancy, but I think most of the time you'll refer to it as just SAE running in WPA3. And indeed, that's what most of you chose. The WPA3 was the answer we were looking for. Now, IPsec, of course, is a very common way of setting up a VPN tunnel, usually between two different sites. A site-to-site tunnel commonly uses IPsec. You could, of course, use IPsec on a workstation client-level communication and encryption over VPN. IPsec is designed for VPN encryption, VPN tunneling. And in that particular case, it's useful for protecting data that may be transmitted over an insecure medium, i.e. the internet, but it doesn't really help with the wireless handshake process. So that would not be what we would use either. Code signing, you may have even seen this when you install an application. If this application has a certificate that is either doesn't have a certificate, or the certificate in that application is something that your system does not inherently trust, you may get a prompt that says, hey, the signature on this application that you're installing is not something we recognize. Is this okay to install? And it's doing that because there is a code signature on the software itself. Very common to see on our modern operating systems. Another common thing to see, especially on websites, is secure cookies. That is a great way to protect information that we're storing regarding that website, but doesn't help you with the wireless handshake process. And input validation, well, we should always have some type of input validation if you are an application developer, but input validation is not what we're trying to stop in this case. In this case, we're trying to stop people from capturing data on that wireless network and being able to use that data to gain access to our network. That is not the use of input validation. The answer in this case, the one by far that most of you chose, was indeed WPA3, and you did that exactly correct. That is the answer that we wanted. As you can tell, there are many topics on the Security Plus exam. We've already talked about some encryption. We've talked about connectivity. We've talked about different authentication factors. And there's, of course, so much more. If you look at our entire Security Plus course, It's 121 videos. There are over 15 hours of content available for you to watch right now on our YouTube channel. But of course, with all of that content, you may find that you don't have time to watch 121 videos, or once you've watched the 121 videos, how do you remember what you did on the first video? Well, one of the things you could do, of course, is take notes. That's a lot of content to take notes. What I've done is I've already taken the notes for you. That's because I've created a set of course notes that takes all of the important information that is in our videos and puts them into a single 96-page document. This is what the course notes look like. This is the PDF version, or what we call our digital edition of the course notes. And you can see that we have a very big table of contents here covering every topic from every video. And you can see that we add all of the text from the videos, all of the important charts that are in these videos, all of the important graphics that are in these videos are in our course notes. So if you're spending way too much time taking notes and you'd like to spend more time really understanding the information that's being presented to you, we'll take the notes for you and you can watch the videos and use all of these together. And of course, this is the PDF version, so you can put this on all of your mobile devices, on your computer at home, on your laptop. Wherever you are, you will have access to the notes. And if you get our physical edition, it's obviously the same information. In fact, I can probably find the page that we're looking at here. So the page that you see in the digital edition, you can see there's the page in the physical edition. And this is something that you can, of course, take along with you wherever you happen to go. You can decide during checkout whether you'd like the digital edition or the physical edition. It is a great way to keep things together and be able to use them. If you do purchase the physical edition of this, you also get access to the digital edition for no additional cost. So as you're waiting for us to print this and ship it to you, that does take a number of days. So you will have access to download the digital PDF immediately. So a great way to do that. If you'd like more information on that, you can see a quick demonstration of that. Although we just sort of did that, you can watch it again on our website at professormesser.com/701CN. And you can, of course, learn about our course notes, our practice exams, and so much more from that link as well. This is also a great way to help support what we are doing here. Every dollar of that goes back into keeping this engine going. So thank you so much for your support of what we do here as well. Let's do another question from the Security Plus exam objectives. This is a question that asks, state law requires an organization to retain 3 years of incoming and outgoing email messages. Which of the following best describes this requirement? Is this the software development lifecycle, regulatory compliance, vendor risk assessment, exposure factor, or non-disclosure agreement? You might be working at a place where you have to do this. You may already be familiar with this requirement. This is something that many organizations have to worry about. I do not have to worry about this. I do not have any legal requirements to maintain data over a certain amount of time. I do maintain data over a certain amount of time. I'm just not legally required to. Some things I don't collect over time. So you got different options there as well. It just sort of depends on where you come from and what you're working on and the important parts of this for you. This might be a compliance that is required, or a life cycle, or an assessment, or a factor, or an agreement that you are already familiar with. So have a look at the different options that are here. Maybe that can help you a bit with knowing what these are. Let's see how you did with this one. I think you might have done really well. I didn't look at the answers, but I have a good feeling about this. This question asks, state law requires an organization to retain 3 years of incoming and outgoing email messages. Which of the following best describes this requirement? Is it a software development lifecycle? Is it regulatory compliance? Is it vendor risk assessment? Is it exposure factor? Or is it non-disclosure agreement? Let's see if we get 100% on this one. Got pretty well, 93%. I like to throw these in for every once in a while to make sure we understand some of these terms and perhaps understand the other terms that happen to be on here as well. Regulatory compliance is not just in a single type of business. There are many different organizations with different requirements. So if you are an organization, for example, a very common one of these is for healthcare. and being able to have healthcare requirements and store information over a certain amount of time. Legal environments. Legal requires a lot of storage over a very long period of time. And a lot of companies that deal with email or deal with storage already understand this, and they might even have a set of services and policies that allows you to just automatically archive all of this information so you don't even have to think about it. Regulatory compliance indeed is the answer that we were looking for. Would not be the 4%. Let's see, 93% of you said regulatory compliance. 4% said non-disclosure agreement. A non-disclosure agreement is effectively a contract between two or more people that says that whatever you discuss will remain private between those particular organizations. 2% said software development lifecycle. This is a process of how do you build software. Obviously, a science unto itself. We don't get into a lot of software development in the Security Plus exam because we're focused more on the IT side and not the computer science side. But it's still important to know when someone hands you code, how was that originally created? What process did they go through to hand that code off to you to install on that server? 1% said exposure factor. Exposure factors describe just how much of a particular vulnerability could affect your organization. It doesn't really have anything to do with retaining incoming and outgoing email messages. And vendor risk assessments are becoming very popular, almost overwhelmingly popular to the vendors, because every customer wants to be able to ask questions about how a vendor's security is being handled. And these days, why wouldn't they? There's so much security issues associated with software and hardware that we're getting from vendors. We'd like to make sure that we are able to understand what those challenges might be. So vendor risk assessments can be incredibly useful for that. So that is the answer we were looking for. 93% of you got that one absolutely right. Regulatory compliance. That's what we were looking for. Let's make it a little bit more challenging. Let's now take another question. Speaking of processes and procedures, here's a question that asks, which of the let's see if I can actually show it to you. There it is. Which of the following evaluates each authentication and access decision based on predefined policies and other information sources? Which of the following evaluates each authentication and access decision based on predefined policies and other information sources? Would that be group policy, policy engine, sender policy framework, acceptable use policy, or policy enforcement point? Policy, policy, policy. Policy, policy, policy. Which of the following authenticates or evaluates each authentication and access decision based on predefined policies and other information sources? Is that group policy, policy engine, sender policy framework, acceptable use policy, or policy enforcement point? See what you know. See if you know the answer for this one. A lot of answers coming in quickly on this one too. I never know if that's good or if that's bad. So we're going to find out which one of these policies is the right policy that we need to answer the question about policies. Maybe this is one you think it's hard for you to answer the question. Think how hard it is for me to help explain the answer to this question. We're going to find out how well we do here in just a moment. But the answer indeed, as the chat room has already discovered, the answer is policy. Is what this one happens to be. But what kind of policy? It's got to be one of these, right? See if you happen to know this answer. Lock it in at any time. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer your question. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, which of the following evaluates each authentication and access decision based on predefined policies and other information sources? Would it be group policy, policy engine, sender policy framework, acceptable use policy, or policy enforcement point? I'm not sure if I'm happy or not happy about these answers, but there they are anyway. Let's see how you did. And it's a rainbow. It's a policy, 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 policy. So we effectively have almost a three-way tie for first. 30% say group policy, 29% say policy enforcement point, 25% of you say that it is the policy engine, and then we go down to 14% say it is an acceptable use policy, and then 3% say it is sender policy framework. So which one is it? What do we think the answer is? What do we believe the correct answer is on this one? Let's show the correct answer. It is Policy Engine. 25% of you chose Policy Engine. It is the third most popular answer we received, and that should be the answer that you were looking at. This is a zero trust question. So if you remember the zero trust block diagram that I put into the video, this is exactly what this does. If you look at the basics of the policy decision point, the PDP, this is the section of zero trust that does finally make the decision, ultimately make the decision on whether something is allowed or something is not allowed. This is one that is really making an important decision about whether somebody gains access to a particular resource. So this decision needs to be made by something, and the something that makes this decision is the policy engine. Policy engine is evaluating each access decision, and it's basing it, making that decision based on a set of criteria that you already provided to it. So you've said, if you're coming from an internal IP address, you can access that resource. Or you could say, if you are part of the executive management group, you can have access to that spreadsheet. But something needs to be able to make that decision and decide you are granted access, you are denied access. Maybe we'll take access away from you to be able to make that happen. This is making active types of policies, making decisions on these policies. And that is why we really need to understand the zero trust process. Zero trust is not going away. This is a process and a set of criteria and a decision-making process that is something we really do need to understand for this exam, and I'm sure for Security Plus exams in the future as well. This is an important thing to know about. This is only one part of the policy decisions that are being made. But there are other parts to zero trust. If you want to learn more about it, we have an entire video on it, of course, section 1.2, and the name of the video is aptly named Zero Trust. Now let's see about these other options that we had on this list. The plurality of you chose group policy. We're all very familiar, I think, with group policy. Group policy is a series of credentials, well, not credentials, a series of services, requirements, limitations, configurations that we put into an Active Directory type of infrastructure. Group policy it really is the secret sauce to Active Directory that allows you to manage hundreds of thousands of devices from one single screen on your network. But group policy itself is setting up what the criteria is, but it's not actually making the active evaluation of that. So that's why it doesn't quite fit into this making authentication and access decisions based on predefined policies and information sources. That is word for word the definition of a policy engine. And it's that evaluation and trying to make that decision that's the important part of that. Group policy is a database of policies, but it's not actively making those decisions as part of the operating system. We rely on the OS itself to make that in the world of Windows. We also have other options in here. Policy enforcement point. We didn't have that in our list, but the policy engine and policy administrator hands those things off to the policy enforcement point because something has to be the part that stops you. That is, this is your security person who says, wait, where are you going? Like, oh, here's my badge. Let me call up and see if you're really allowed through that door. And your policy enforcement point will call up to your policy administrator, which then refers to the policy engine to determine whether this is something that you should be allowed into, and then you're allowed through that particular virtual doorway, if you will. 14% of you said acceptable use policy. This is the set of policies that are probably in your employee handbook when you start with an organization that determines how you are able to use the equipment that the organization provides to you. So there are certain acceptable uses of your corporate phone. There are certain acceptable uses of the browser that's on your laptop, and this defines what those acceptable uses might be. As you can probably imagine, there are unacceptable uses of those things. It leads you to that. Logically, there must be something unacceptable that you could do with a phone or a browser. Yes, there is. And so they're putting in on this document, in this acceptable use policy, They're spelling out for you only these things are acceptable. An important thing to consider, especially if you'd like to keep that job, which I think you probably do. We have 3% that said Sender Policy Framework. We talked about Sender Policy Framework a little bit earlier when we talked about anti-spam mechanisms. We talked about DMARC. This works along with DMARC. The SPF is how it's usually referred to, and the SPF is one the Sender Policy Framework works in conjunction with that. So anytime you see Sender Policy Framework, we're really talking about one of the many anti-spam functions built into your email system. So here is the answer that we were looking for. It's the policy engine. 25% of you did that one. You got that one absolutely correct. And if you are trying to learn more about Zero Trust, you can look at the entire Zero Trust, how the planes are set up, the data plane, the control plane, where the different mechanisms fit into this, how it fits into the real world with your laptop or your system that you're trying to get access. This is how it all works together through the Zero Trust model. Make sure you are familiar with that if you're planning to learn everything you need to know about the Security Plus exam. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I'd love to provide you with an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. I realize not everybody is using CEUs to renew, but if you are, this might be a good way to get another webinar CEU and add it to your list. The way that you would earn that CEU is you must follow this process. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the Contact Us link. That brings up a form where you put in your name, an email address, put in a subject line, and in the subject line, please put the February 2026 Security Plus or something close to that. So I'll at least know where this came from. And then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Policy Engine, Group Policy. Policy Engine, Group Policy. Yes, we said policy twice. Those are the super secret code words of the month. Policy Engine and Group Policy. You can put any other text in there or any other message you'd like to send to me. I do read through every single one of these, so thank you for adding those in. I get so many, I'm not able to respond back interactively to all of them, but I do enjoy reading through them when I'm going through this list. So again, the process is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click Contact Us, put in your name, your email address, and a subject line. Please put February 2026 Security Plus. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, Policy Engine, Group Policy. There you go. You can't go wrong. Just put that in. And even if you might even get the subject line not exactly right, that's okay. But make sure you get those super secret code words in there absolutely correct. That is what you want to do. Make sure you know exactly the important part of that one. That would be an important piece to add and make sure it is correct. And that means that you could earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU. It takes me about a week to turn these around, and I will send them, of course, back to you. Just keep checking your inbox, and I'll have that arrive as soon as I manage to get all of those together and step through them. I tend to get quite a few of them, so it takes a little bit of time to get all of that done. We do have some, speaking of time, we do have a little time left, so let's do some more questions, shall we? Next on our list, let's do this one, and it says, during the installation process for a new internet browser, 3 additional utilities are installed and configured to run during startup. Which of the following would best describe this security issue? Is this a buffer overflow? Is it spraying? Is it bloatware? Is it a DDoS? Or is it privilege escalation? I think there may be an argument to be made along some of these that are here, but only one really fits the best. So make sure if you know this one, you'll be in really good shape. If you think you know the answer, use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, use that link on your screen to lock in your answer. You might even be painfully aware of this particular security issue, but do you know what you call it? That's really the question. So make sure you look at all of these. Of course, all of the answers that are on here come directly from the official CompTIA exam objectives. So even if you did know what the right answer was, make sure you know what the wrong answers are as well, because that will be important. You might get a question on your actual exam dealing with an answer that wasn't right on our live stream, but is going to be right on your exam. Again, these questions are questions that I write. Nobody has access to the actual exam questions, so you're not going to be able to see those on this live stream, certainly. So make sure you are familiar with that. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, during the installation process for a new internet browser, 3 additional utilities are installed and configured to run during startup. Which of the following would best describe the security issue? Is it a buffer overflow? Is it spraying? Is it bloatware? Is it a DDoS? Or is it privilege escalation? Let's see how you did with this one. We're going to stop our poll. There it goes. And 82% say it's bloatware, but we also have a large number of you that said, well, 10% of you, double digits, said buffer overflow. Right behind it, 5% of you said privilege escalation, 2% said DDoS, and 1% said spraying. So this is a problem, I think, across the board. We're seeing a little bit less of this most recently, but I still have installations that I do that want to install other things. The problem is I did agree to install one piece of software, something that I can trust, something that I really do want to install. But this other software that came along with it, I have not vetted. I'm not familiar with the software that is trying to install. And it's so easy when you're going through the installation just to click next, 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 next. And that's what they're hoping for, is to make that happen. So this is very commonly, as this implies, bloatware. That's what we were looking for as our answer here, 82%. It's almost overwhelming. You see this all the time with software that wants to install more and more and more software on your system that you did not ask for. This uses space on your storage drive. It might load up during installation and use resources that you do not want it to use. And again, you may not have any idea what that software does. So make sure you are familiar with the process, where this comes from. This will be an important part of this as you get into security and making sure these systems are maintained, they are secure, and that people just simply aren't installing software that they have no idea what it's going to do for them. So the answer, yes, of course it is bloatware. That is exactly what we were looking for. That is the answer to this one, whether it is software that is being installed on or is already installed on a brand new system, or whether it's software that you're installing and it installs additional pieces along with it. Both of those are considered bloatware, and that would be the answer that we were looking for here as well. Now, we do have 10% of you said a buffer overflow. A buffer overflow is basically it really is a way for people that are working through application vulnerabilities to overload certain sections of that code and effectively allow you to access parts of memory that normally you should not be able to access. There should be limitations built into your software to prevent somebody from putting so much information into an application that it extends past that overflow area, but it's one of those scenarios where if you're an application developer, it's an important consideration. Sometimes you're able to take a buffer overflow the data into a known section of memory that then would allow you to manipulate consistently and gain access perhaps to additional features or data that you normally would not have access to. So that's a significant problem, but it really doesn't have anything to do with a browser installing additional software during the setup process. You also have 5% that said a privilege escalation. This is when you're running as a user on your system, and then you are in some way able to have an escalated level of privileges. So you are suddenly able to get administrator access without legitimately having administrator access. That's the real vulnerability part of privilege escalation. But privilege escalation can also be legitimate. So you have to understand which context you're talking about with that one as well. We have a DDoS. This is the one I think it's almost a distributed denial of service. You have all this software suddenly being installed, but not technically. So a DDoS is usually most effective across the network from multiple locations, overwhelming a particular service and making that service unavailable. And then you have password spraying. Password spraying is a technique where an attacker will try maybe one password try a day at your access. So they'll put in your username and then they'll try a password. They'll try Ninja1 and they'll see if that works. And they'll get a message back saying, nope, that's the wrong password. Instead of them trying constantly one after another to try to brute force your password online, they instead will wait until the next day and then they'll try again with a different one. So this is a long game, clearly. But it is a case where they're able to keep trying this, and because it's simply 1 or 2 attempts during the day, it can very easily slip under the radar. Nobody even recognizes that's one person. That's a normal day for me typing in a password wrong. Well, if you're an attacker, it's a great way to try this process with a brute force without anybody knowing that you're performing that brute force. Because it's taking place over a long period of time, we refer to that as password spraying. That is exactly what we would look for. I know we've been doing this for about an hour, but I think we can do one more question, can't we? We can fit another one into this mix. Let's do another one. This question, though, I'm going to take from a little bit more directed one. It's not a difficult question I've chosen this month, but it is one that comes directly from my Security Plus practice exams. My practice exams book is one that I created because I just was not happy with the quality of practice exams that I was seeing elsewhere on the internet. The practice exams book that I wrote, I thought, wouldn't it be great if we had practice exams that first were accurate and were vetted to only present you with information that would be associated with the current exam version. Unfortunately, there's a lot of very old material on the internet, and that old material is unimportant for your current exam. You need to have questions that are really focused on what the current exam happens to be. It would also be nice if we were able to get some questions that were written in a way that could help prepare us for the style and tone of questions we get on the actual exam. So I wrote my own. This is a human-built piece of information. This is really the only way to duplicate that process and provide you with the quality needed to know that everything in this book has been specifically written for the SY0-701 exam. It's a big book, 381 pages. There are 3 separate exams in here. We have multiple choice questions in here. We have performance-based questions in here. There's a lot that is in this particular document. This is available in both a PDF format and this physical edition. And again, if you get the physical edition, you get access to the digital edition for free. That is exactly where you can go with that. So I think if you're someone who is working through questions, we should try working through a question in this book as well. Let's take this question. This one is question A87 from the very first exam section that's in here, the first 90 questions. This is on page 29 of our book. And the question asks, again, please no answers in the chat room, please no hints in the chat room. The question asks, a security administrator has configured a virtual machine in a screened subnet with a guest login account and no password. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Is it that the server is a honeypot for attracting potential attackers? Is it that the server is a cloud storage service for remote users? The server will be used as a VPN concentrator, or the server is a development sandbox for third-party programming projects. So one of those would be the right answer. We have to see what this happens to be. But before we get into the answer, the question and the answers and looking at the details of this, this is one where it's useful to know, because this is a situation where we are using this PDF or using this book, you may want to annotate it. So you can, of course, it's a PDF. I'm going to pull up some annotation. Let's do annotation with green. So maybe there are certain things in here, keywords that I would like to highlight. If you have a stylus, you could write on it. And of course, you can save this so that you can come back later and step through this particular question and see the annotation that you put on other sessions. Also, my book is designed so that you have options. For example, if you just wanted to know is the answer A, B, C, or D, you could just go to the quick answer on page 33 and see if it's A, B, C, or D. But I like going through the detailed answer, not only to see if I'm really validated on what I think the right answer is, but I also want to know why the wrong answers are wrong. So you'll notice the details are on page 125. We're on page 29. What's a PDF? And nobody likes to scroll through a PDF. So I put links that are right in the document, right in the book. You can click on the word "the details," and it will take you to page 125. Click, boom, we're on page 125. And it has, of course, the question at the top and the possible answers. And it tells you that the answer is A, server's a honeypot for attracting potential attackers, and tells you screen subnet's a great place to put services from the internet. So a honeypot, that's exactly the place you would put a honeypot so that people can gain access to that. Now, one of the things that frustrates me online with practice questions is that a lot of the questions, they will tell you if you got the right answer right. But I don't get the right answer right all the time. And being able to work through it, I often get the wrong answer, and I want to know why I got the wrong answer. And one of the best ways to do that is to list through the incorrect answers. In my book, I document every single incorrect answer individually and tell you why I don't believe that to be the correct answer, so that you can really get a feel for what the wrong answers are and why they are the wrong answers. I think that completes that learning loop, that loop where, oh, I got it wrong. Every time you get a question wrong, I see that as an opportunity, because now we have a chance to figure out what the right answer is and then understand more about what the wrong answer really is associated with. And because almost 100% of the wrong answers in this book are also topics from the exam objectives, you're not only learning about the right answer, you're also learning about the other answers as well. It's almost like getting 4 possible questions in one single view. So we also, if you went through this entire question, you have no idea what this is referring to, I have a link at the very bottom along with the QR code that will take you to the video that is the one I used to create the question to begin with. So that will help you through any terms, any nomenclature that perhaps you were not completely familiar with. And once you're done with this, maybe you want to go to the next question, but you're on page 125. Well, I'll just use the back button. You know, there's a back button that's in your PDF reader. Probably is. There is in most PDF readers. I click the back button, click, and we're back to where we started, and I can go to the next question that's on our list. Those are my practice exams. If this is something you think might help you, you can have a look at the practice exams. And of course, if you get the practice exams along with the course notes at the same time, you get a little bit of a discount on both of them, which is kind of nice as well. You can find out more on our website. Go to professormesser.com/securitype for more information. The PDF reader that I'm using on my screen is the one that comes with the Mac OS operating system. It's called Preview. I've also used on my system the Adobe Acrobat PDF reader, and I've used a number of third-party PDF readers as well. All of them work great with the practice exams book. You're covered either way. I wanted to make this so that anyone would have access to this data regardless of what system you're on, regardless of what operating system you have. You don't have to be connected to the internet. All you have to do is get your hands on the practice exams book, and it's there locally for you to use. Find out more, professormesser.com/securitype. Well, we've gone through a lot of information today, and I've mentioned many times that the official exam objectives are incredibly important. And that's because, well, they are. They contain everything you need to know to pass your exam. That's quite a statement. I get a lot of questions all the time to people that say, how do I really know if I'm really ready to take this exam? Well, you simply go to the objectives and it will tell you, because the objectives list out everything in this exam. For example, section 1, domain 1 of the exam is general security concepts. Section 1.1 is compare and contrast various types of security controls. So it gives you categories such as technical, managerial, operational, and physical. And it gives you control types, which are preventive, deterrent, detective, corrective, compensating, and directive. So you've got a number of those to step through. All of these are what you would be expected to know for the exam. Once you have those down, you can go to the next section. Section 1.2, summarize fundamental security concepts, including confidentiality, integrity, and availability, that's CIA, non-repudiation, AAA, authenticating people, authenticating systems, authorization models, gap analysis, zero trust, there it is again, control plane, there it is, with the data plane, physical security, and all of those. There's your honey pots and honey nets. So a lot of the things we talked about today, When I said it came directly from the exam objectives, you can see now it really did come directly from the exam objectives. The nice part about this is CompTIA sticks to this list like glue. They rarely, if ever, go outside the scope of the exam objectives. That makes this a perfect study source. That doesn't make it easier. There are hundreds of objectives you have to know, but at least you have a finite list. You're not going down some path, learning something that's unnecessary to be able to pass your Security Plus exam. That is exactly where you can go. If you want to get your copy of the objectives, go to professormesser.com/objectives. That would be a great place to go to learn about those. We have a lot of fun on these live streams. I'm so glad you're able to join us. Stick around. We have our after show in a moment where I will be answering questions that you have been submitting throughout this live stream. But I also want to let you know that we do one of these study groups every month. Our next study group is going to be in March. Can you believe we're already in March of 2026? Our A+ study groups are on the 3rd and the 6th. Our Network Plus study group on the 11th. Our next Security Plus study group is currently scheduled for March the 20th. I say currently because if you were here last week, that was a different date. I think that was the 18th. Now it's been pushed to the 20th. And A+ was changed from the 5th to the 6th. This happens all the time, people. This is my world. This is the chaos in which I live. And so I'm bringing that chaos to you in the form of my calendar. So always check in with the calendar to know when the next live event is going to be. I change it in the calendar first thing. So if you go to that link, professormesser.com/calendar, you have the most recent up-to-date information about all of these. So make sure you are familiar with that. If you are planning to join us live, and we hope you do, you can check that calendar and it'll let you know exactly when that is going to be. And we'd love to have you join us for this, the chat room, the live interaction. It's always a lot of fun. We always like doing it as well. Well, although the first hour is done, we're not even close to being finished yet. We have our after show coming up. Stick around for that. I see a number of people putting questions into the chat room. If you'd like to get those questions answered, make sure you go to that link we've been using so far, professormesser.com/QA. Use the tab on the top to be able to submit those questions for the after show. You can, of course, follow us when we're not here. We're on Discord, professormesser.com/Discord. We are on X, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook. We're in a lot of places. And if you would like to join us wherever that place happens to be, just type in professormesser.com/ the name of that site. You'll probably find us there. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. If you happen to be in the US, Canada, or a US territory, you can save some money right off the top. It's the same vouchers you get from the CompTIA website. They just allow me to offer it to you at a little bit of a discount, really kind of a lot of a discount, especially if you get more than one. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, our Security Plus course notes is a great way to support what we do here. You can find out more about those at professormesser.com/701SB. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere. Stick around. Now, the fun part in our after show starts because I have no idea what questions you may have submitted to me. And now we get to go through them together to figure out what you would like to know. This is your chance to ask me anything. I don't know if I'll answer anything, but you can ask me anything. Find out in the after show coming up immediately after this. Don't go anywhere. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on our Security Plus study group. Thanks, everybody. All right, one moment, please. I'll take a sip. And we will come back to you. There we go. Oh, wait, it's me and me again. There we go. I've now disappeared. That's too many me's on the screen at one time. At least for me, it is. So now is the part of the study group where I can ask you questions or I can answer the questions that you have submitted to me. So I guess I should put that up. There it is. So if you would like to submit a question for our after show, you can think of it as office hours, if you will. You can do that at professormesser.com/QA. So I'm going to bring up, in fact, if you go to that link right now, you will see there is a message waiting for you. Well, not waiting for you necessarily, but on the screen it says you can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be moderating the questions, so they're not going to appear on the screen immediately, but they are logged behind the scenes here. And then I will go through all of these to find out and answer the questions that you happen to have. So a number of you have been putting questions into the chat room. They go by so quick, it's sometimes hard to find all of them. If you do have a question you would like to have answered, this is the best way to submit that question. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Let me now go to the QA section myself. There are a number of questions already waiting for us. So I want to go through all of these and learn what these are. Okay, let's talk about, we have a number of questions. By the way, you could submit questions for this after show dealing with IT security. It can be dealing with Security Plus. It could be dealing with other certifications or information technology in general, or anything else. If you have a question about anything that you would like to discuss, you can always do that and submit it in a question. I'm more than happy to take your questions about anything. A lot of people ask me about pop culture. You hear me talk about pop culture all the time, don't you? Yeah, I usually don't answer those questions. There's not much pop culture in my life. So you can ask questions, but some questions may not be able to be answered. So we may not cover them. Fortunately, a lot of the questions we already have really are technical questions. Let's start with Maximus, who says, what's your opinion on cyber competitions? Do they really have a positive impact on one's chances of getting a job? So we'll talk about that piece of it. And then the more pressing question, he really buried the lead on this one. It says, I would also like to know what your favorite sandwich is. So here with the really pressing questions, Maximus is bringing them. So let's see if we can cover all of these incredibly difficult questions that are coming in. So next on our list is, or first on our list really is the question from Maximus, who says, what's my opinion on cyber competitions? If you've not seen these before, there are a number of different ones that you will find throughout different parts of the world, but these are generally competitions at different levels that focus on what you happen to know or things you're able to do. For example, if you've ever worked or gone through the A+ certification, there are competitions on troubleshooting desktop computer platforms. And groups and teams of people will work, they'll be presented with a computer that doesn't work, and then they will have a certain amount of time to get that machine working. And they'll have to find every problem that was put into that computer, solve those problems, and then present those as fast as possible. Really a lot of fun. So, and not only is it fun to participate in the competition, especially if you're a competitive person, this can be a delightful time. But this is also a good chance to really understand the troubleshooting process, understand how to resolve problems in a very practical way. Maximus asked specifically, do they really have a positive impact on one's chances of getting a job? I think they are a great way to have some credentials that you can show to somebody, not only that you're part of this team or that you're participated in one of these competitions, but it's also a great way to show that you have some practical knowledge of this. It's not just you understanding how a BIOS works and understanding that if you're having a problem, you might want to perform a BIOS upgrade. You've actually done the BIOS upgrade. You've actually been troubleshooting BIOS problems. You already understand some of the nuances of that. So there's some real nice hands-on functionality there that would apply. Same thing applies to cyber competitions, although those are a little bit higher in scope. They're a little bit more complex in scope. We see this often in a number of large trade shows and trade events where there will be a certain day where here's a laptop and everybody has to hack into the laptop. And the first person that hacks into the laptop, they win a new thing. They win something. They win the competition. This is a lot of fun too, because a lot of these security professionals will save up their attacks, their known or unknown vulnerabilities, and use those during this event to gain access to that laptop and win the competition. The good part for us in the industry is now that they've used that attack against that laptop, we can then use that attack to understand what the vulnerability really is and then create a patch for that vulnerability. So that's also very, very useful, not just for your own personal knowledge, but also for correcting problems that could affect a large number of people. So I think these are great things. I think cyber competitions are a lot of fun. You learn a lot. You meet and work with people. And there's some nice upsides if you happen to win. There's some nice things that you can bring home. With the laptop, a good example of this with things like CanSec West, they have a Pwn to Own is the name of their competition. Here's the laptop. And if you are the first one to hack into the laptop, you get to keep the laptop. So that's how they do it. So if you pwn it, you own it. And it's kind of nice. You can walk home with a new laptop from your security cyber competition and being able to work with those. Sometimes there's money involved. Sometimes there are other prizes involved. So it's a nice thing to do. And I think anytime you have a chance to use the knowledge that you have gained and use it in a practical way, that's a pretty good thing to have there. And there are great stories that you can bring to the table in an interview, because part of that question was, does this help you get a job? Well, if you can explain to somebody the competition you were in, what you did to hack into that system, that's some good stuff. There's some good things there that we could work through. So yes, I think those are great competitions to work on. I think you can learn a lot. And I think it also helps in your, not just get a job, but it kind of helps you overall in your career and being able to work through challenges that may not even necessarily have a direct impact on your career, but it lets you do your current job even better. Let's keep going through your list of questions you are submitting. Of course, you can submit questions at any time. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. Let's see if we can work through the questions that you have been submitting to me. We've answered a number of these sort of in the process of doing the live stream. So some of these I am skipping over, but if you have submitted a question and I don't get to that question, we probably answered that one earlier, just so you are aware. Let's talk about the exam. Let's talk about you've now gotten your certification, you work through it. And the question, by the way, I don't want to detract from Maximus's probably more important question. My favorite sandwich is the club, of course. The club sandwich is the one sandwich where you can have a very strong determination of how well a restaurant is handled by their club sandwich. That's my thought. I almost said my favorite sandwich, of course, is a hot dog. But instead of creating chaos and just watching the world burn, I'm going to give you the legitimate answer, which is a club sandwich. That's the answer. Let's go to a question from Richard, who asks, I know that when I secure my Security Plus, my Network Plus, and my A Plus will auto-renew. What about in 3 years when I renew my Security Plus? Will that auto-renew the other two? Or do I have to manually renew them all? I love these questions because we're already thinking about, we're going to get the Security Plus. Now we're already thinking 3 years down the line. I need to renew this. I need to make sure this certification continues to be valid. And you do. I think the best place to answer this question will be at CompTIA itself. Let's go to the CompTIA website, shall we? Here we are. This is the CompTIA website, and I'm going to go right up to the top in their list. They have a section for resources. This is where you want to go if you're interested in options for renewing. There are many different ways to renew your certification. There is a video in the YouTube video description of this video that is how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. We talk a lot about the CertMaster CE, but I try to go through every renewal option in there so you will be able to make a decision on what makes the most sense for you. Let's go to resources. When I click that, you'll see there's an option in resources for continuing education. That is what we want to choose. So we'll click Learn More. And under the Learn More section, we have why do you need to renew, learn about the renewal process, choose your renewal path, or submit your CEUs. I'm going to choose, because I know where this happens to be, choose your renewal path, and I'm going to choose the option to renew with a single activity. I'm going to choose that one on my list. I think that's the right section. And in that section, you can take the CertMaster CE, you could take a higher level CompTIA cert, you could take a non-CompTIA cert, or you could take the certification exam again. I do not want to take the certification exam again. We already went through this one time. Although that is a perfectly valid way of renewing a certification, it's probably the hardest way to renew a certification. The question that was presented to us was about understanding the higher level CompTIA certification. So I want to click on that one. And this is by the way, this page has been updated recently, and it's a lot easier to follow, I think. On this screen, they list out all the certifications, and then they provide you with the renewal details. So for example, the question here was about security. Well, we talked about if you take your A+ and you become A+ certified, that A+ certification does not renew or fully renew another CompTIA cert. So A+ is sort of your starting point in the industry. But let's say you then take the Network Plus exam. The Network Plus exam fully renews the A+ certification. So this is something that can be useful. So let's say you take your A+, you become A+ certified, and a couple years goes by, and you decide to take and pass the Network Plus exam. The moment you earn your Network Plus certification, as long as your A+ was still valid, the renewal for A+ now is synchronized to the same day that you pass the Network Plus, and both of those are now good for 3 years. So it's an easy way to renew your A+ certification. This question was specifically about Security Plus. So up here under Security Plus fully renews Network Plus and A+. So by taking Security Plus, you now sync up all 3 of those certifications to expire 3 years from the date that you passed your Security Plus exam. Notice you can't do this in reverse. You can't take Security Plus and then go take Network Plus and expect Network Plus to renew Security Plus, because Network Plus does not. Network Plus only renews A+. So you have to do them in a particular order to take advantage of that type of renewal. So make sure you're familiar with that. That will be an important consideration if you end up getting more than one cert. It might be useful to know where that certification is going to renew and how it's going to renew. The CompTIA website tells you everything you need to know about that. They give you the entire list, and there's nothing extra you have to do. If you already have those previous certifications and you pass Security Plus, they will just automatically be renewed. You don't have to push any buttons. You don't have to tell anybody. It just happens anyway. So a nice way to earn and know what the different options might be for your certification process. And since you're going to be Security Plus certified anyway, it's kind of nice to be thinking about 3 years down the line when you might want to renew some of those things. Very, very useful indeed. Let's keep going through the list of things that you happen to have. Lots of ways that we consider the different options that you have. If you do have a question, of course, you can submit that at any time through the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Okay. There are a number of, this is a question a number of you have put into the chat today. We did get this question in the pre-show, so I think it's worth going through. Shedrick asks, hey, Professor Messer, do you have plans to release any study resources for the brand new, I think it was released yesterday, the CompTIA SecAI Plus certification? It's not a certification, certificate. So the SecAI, as I understand it, is not something where you go to a testing center or take a test online. This is, or maybe it is a test online, but it is not a certification. There's nobody vetting this. There's nobody watching you during the exam. There's no proctor. It's a little bit different than the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. This is, I'm having trouble finding solid study guides. Well, it is brand new. So yes, you are going to have a challenge finding solid study guides, because this is a brand new, it's a 1-day-old certificate, and it's not something that a lot of organizations have been working towards. Obviously, there's no knowledge about how popular or not popular this might be. So this is one of those where I think you'll probably have to wait a bit to start seeing other study materials for this certificate being released somewhere. There's a lot of places where we can go through and understand that part of it. But if you are somebody who is trying to understand some of the terms associated with AI, you're trying to understand how that fits into the world of security, maybe you're trying to understand some of the concerns that the industry has over AI and how it creates a less secure world, then this might be a good certificate for you to study. But currently, there's probably not any employers asking for this because it's brand new. It's a day old. Employers probably don't even know about it. And it's not a certification. It is a certificate. It's sort of a knowledge transfer, and you are verifying that the knowledge was indeed transferred to you. But it is not a standard industry certification in that way. So a little bit different in its scope, but still important information nonetheless. And that might be important information that you could use for the jobs that you're working on today. There's obviously there are problems that we are struggling with in the world of IT security, and some of those problems may be solved by being able to better parse and identify anomalies within very large data sets. If that is how we are categorizing types of AI, which are now it's just a term we seem to apply to everything. My light bulbs have AI in them for some reason. That is a very good way to approach security. It's a big problem that we're trying to solve in the world of IT security. What we're not trying to solve is problems with generative AI or being able to work this. If anything, we're more concerned in the world of IT security on how these AI features built into every single piece of software that we are using these days, whether it really is AI or not is a different question, but they're putting these features into our systems, and these features, as we're finding, are inherently insecure. And some of these features even open up our security and make our data available where we do not want that data to be available. So there are practical concerns about AI. There are significant security concerns about AI and how it's being implemented. And there are places where AI can be very valuable to the IT security world in general. But how do we parse those out? How do we control these? And then how do we make our networks as safe as possible with all of this kludge of nonsensical AI added to everything we happen to do? I think we'll start to see some of this shaking out. We're already seeing places like Microsoft begging us to use their AI. Hey, we stuck AI in here. Why are none of you clicking on this? I think you probably know why. They have to figure that part out themselves. So there's a lot more shaking out that has to happen right now. Companies have invested quite a bit of money in some of these technologies. They have solved many problems that nobody has. So hopefully they will get an ROI on these problems that they have not solved, or problems that they have solved that we do not have. In that particular case, they'll figure out eventually, and it will all shake out, and then we will be wherever we are when that finally happens. So no plans that I do not have any plans to create any SecAI content at the moment. Perhaps if there is a large number of people that really want that, or we're seeing the industry move that way, or everybody seems to want that as part of a requirement for getting a job in the industry, well, perhaps that goes up higher on my list of certifications. That makes a lot of sense. Right now, I think there are many more certifications out there in the world that would have much more of an impact on you getting a job or getting a better job than something like SecAI. So we're probably not going to focus on it, at least not immediately. Let's get more questions in for you. A lot of people are asking questions in this list about when the new Security Plus comes out. And as I mentioned at the beginning of our study group, the current version of the Security Plus exam is still going to be around a year from now. So we are way ahead of even worrying about anything updating or upgrading at this point. Don't even worry about it. Not even your concern at this point. Stick to your 701 exam objectives, get through the exam, and you're going to be fine. About a year from now, maybe at the end of this year, we will start talking more about the process of moving from one version of an exam to another. We're not even close to that at this point. So don't even worry about it, is my recommendation to you. That is not something that should even be on your radar. You should be focusing on the current Security Plus exam, getting through the current Security Plus exam objectives. I have been working towards creating the next version of that Security Plus, whatever it is, because we usually start working on this a year before it's out. And we're already working on it, but there's not a lot of dramatic differences between the exams, but there will be some, but that's not something we have to worry about right now. Right now, we got the 701, and it's a great exam to work through. I think it's a well-balanced exam. It was a big rewrite when the 701 came out. For those of you that were familiar with the 601 exam, you know the 701 exam half of the content of the 701 is from the 601, and the other half is brand new. It was a big rewrite for this current version of Security Plus. The next version won't be quite as dramatic. So you can at least feel a little more comfortable that the things you are learning today will be important things that if something happens and you're not able to take this version, you will be able to apply those to the new version as well. But again, not your concern. I think you should work right now, get your cert, stick to the 701, get your 701 books, watch the 701 videos, get some 701 course notes and practice exams, pass the 701 exam. Then it won't matter if a new exam comes out. Once you're Security Plus certified, they can make a new exam every day. Doesn't matter to you. You're Security Plus certified already. So that's my recommendation to you. For those of you worrying about some new version of the exam, you don't have to worry. You're in good shape right now, thankfully, as we sit here in February of 2026. As we get closer to a migration date, a conversion date, a failover date between those, we can, of course, talk about that too. More questions. Let's keep going. A lot of questions came in about performance-based questions. And as I mentioned with performance-based questions don't have a structure. They don't have a style. They don't have a standard form. You know, with multiple choice questions, we have we have a question that is posed to us and then multiple answers to choose from. And every multiple choice question follows that formula. So we're very comfortable with multiple choice questions. Whenever there's something unknown, it's always scary. Whether that's something technical, whether you've been assigned to a big project of a topic you know nothing about at the moment, or whether you're planning to answer some of these performance-based questions on the exam. We, of course, give you an example of a performance-based question in our study groups every month. So you can go back over the last 12 study groups or so and get a good list of those. And of course, we have performance-based questions in our books as well. But the thing about performance-based questions is they could be anything. They could be in any structure. It could be a diagram. It could be a network design. It could be a drag and drop. It could be a multiple list of things that you have to put in particular order. Performance-based questions have no structure. And I think that is, it makes people fearful of the exam, but you don't have to be. Because as I mentioned before, everything you need to know about this exam is contained in the exam objectives. So what you need to do is go list out all of those objectives. Go to the list. And if you know everything that is in this objective list, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. You already know the answer because you have studied this entire group. And that's the important part of performance-based questions. They're not asking you about something you don't know. They're not suddenly pulling something out of the air that you've never studied and asking you a question about it. They're all coming from this list. And that's why I tell you all the time, go to the exam objectives. They will be able to help you through not just the multiple choice questions. This is your best strategy for passing the performance-based questions as well. So don't worry so much about that. You know, with the new version of this, or say new, it's now 3 years old, the 701 exam, almost 3 years. The 701 exam is one that in the 601 version, there were a lot of command line options. This is just one example, of course, but there were a lot of command lines in the 601 exam. You had to know about how a lot of tools worked, a lot of security tools, when you would use them. In the 701 exam, none of that's in there. You'll notice the 701 exam objectives, there's no command lines in here. There's no list of security tools in here, and that's intentional. They took a lot of those and moved them into the CISA Plus exam, the Cybersecurity System Administrator exam. So the CISA exam took a lot of those and took them off Security Plus. And I'm glad because the 601 Security Plus exam was just enormous. It was a big exam. It had a big scope, and CompTIA recognized that and said, let's make the Security Plus exam have a more focused scope that didn't take you all over the place and really focused on giving you a foundation, giving you the fundamentals you need to get into the world of IT security. And then we'll use CISA Plus to be able to test you on command lines and test you on tools and test you on the application of some of those things. So that's what I would recommend you do. If you're concerned about performance-based questions, don't be. One of the biggest pieces of feedback I always get about performance-based questions is after someone takes their exam, they will come into our Discord and they'll say, I just took Security Plus. I was so worried about performance-based questions. Turns out they weren't as bad as I thought. That's a common theme, is people, I think it's the fear of the unknown. They're so worried about this nebulous performance-based question exam that's out there that they are so worried that it overwhelms them. And indeed, it is overwhelming to think if you don't know what's coming, it's overwhelming. But don't worry. You already know the topics. You've already studied the exam objectives. It doesn't matter how they ask them. They will certainly be able to do that. So a great way to go through the exam objectives. Some of you are asking, how do you even get these objectives? And I gave you a link earlier. If you go to professormesser.com/objectives, which I'm going to do on my screen and show it to you. So here's the objectives that are here. And it shows you in these objectives, I have links directly to the A+, Network Plus, Security Plus objectives. And I give you kind of a summary. You have to go to the CompTIA website and you have to go to these pages and then scroll. You might not be able to find it. You scroll down a little bit and you'll see there's a red box there. If you're blocking JavaScript or you're blocking other things on a web page, you might not see that red box. So remove your filters, remove your blockers, and you'll see that red box show up. You put your email. Let's do it. Let's just go to it. Go to the Security Plus objectives. Oh, thank you, advertising. And here we go here's the Security Plus page on the CompTIA website. I'm going to scroll down, get rid of some of this on the screen. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down, scroll down some more. Scroll up, there's the red box. Now, I already put my email address in here originally, so it's presenting me with the downloaded list of objectives. But if you have not put in your email address, it has that there. Put in your email, click OK, and it immediately changes into this. So you don't even have to wait for an email. You don't have to register or verify anything. It just lists them out for you. And then you click the language you would like. And now you have the exam objectives. That's how easy it is. It's very simple to get your hands on those objectives. They made it even better, even easier to get through those. There were a number of people that were asking about time frames in the questions that you have presented. And for example, how long should I expect to study take my Security Plus exam? Can I study for a week and take my Security Plus exam? Well, you can take your Security Plus exam whenever you would like, but a week is pretty aggressive. On average, what we have seen on our site, and we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of, probably tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people come through our website because we have about 2 million views on our videos every month. So you can imagine a lot of people are going through this content. And on average, what we have seen is it takes usually about 2 to 3 months for someone to study everything they need to study and take their exam. Now, that's on average, of course. So if you are someone who's already in the IT industry, you're already doing things with security, that number is probably going to be a little bit faster. If you have a lot more time during the day, maybe you don't currently have a job and you've got a lot of time to study during the day, you obviously go a little bit faster. But on average, you will find that usually takes 2 to 3 months. For me, I'm definitely not average. I take longer on my certification exams because I don't have a lot of spare time. I might have an hour at night. I might have an hour during the day. So it takes me like 6 months to get through that. That takes a long time, but that's what I need to be able to really understand the exam objectives in a way that I'm comfortable enough walking into the exam and taking that particular exam version. So the amount of time it takes is going to be different for everyone. You're going to have your own schedule. And once you pass through the first section, you'll have a pretty good idea of just how long it's going to take you to be able to do that. But I've had people come through my site and say, I studied for 2 weeks and took it and I passed. But these are people that are already in the industry. A lot of people end up taking Security Plus as their first exam because the U.S. federal government uses Security Plus as an entry-level certification to get a job in IT. So they're not even worried about A+ and Network Plus. They want you to have a Security Plus or similar certification just to qualify to have a job working in IT, primarily for the Department of Defense, but we also see those requirements on other organizations as well. So that's another example is that you really do have to think about what the requirements will be for you. A lot of people ask me all the time, what should my next cert be? I don't know. What would employers like you to have? What would you like to have? And do those things match? So these are questions you have to think about. Everybody has a different trajectory. Everybody has a different plan, a different strategy for what they would like to do in their career. So I don't have the answer for you. You do, though, and I can help guide you into what decisions should be made, but I can't answer for you the question of what your next search should be. Only you can answer that one. Let's go next on our list. We do have some time left to get through a couple of extra questions. So let's go through that list and work through those. And by the way, I think using the exam objectives as your study list is a great way to do that. So go through those objectives, check them off as you go. That's a great way to study. There's also in many books, if you're reading a book, it probably is not following the same format as the official exam objectives. But most books will have a cross-reference so that if you're on chapter 7, it might say the information in this chapter comes from the exam objective for section 1.6 and section 2.4. So you can always cross-reference that with the objectives. And from there, you can, of course, cross-reference to anything else. Let's keep going through your list of questions and what happens to be there. This mic is in my face today for some reason, and I don't know why. We'll have to figure that out too. Next question. This is an odd one. Haven't even heard this one before. This is from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, is it true there are discounts on CompTIA certifications every March? If so, did they start immediately on March 1st? No, it's not true. There are discounts on CompTIA certifications every March. At least traditionally, there's not been. I'm not sure where. That's an odd one. That one I've not heard before. So thank you, Anonymous, for sending this in. And of course, as I've already mentioned, I already give you, actually, there are discounts on CompTIA certifications every day on ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. So if you're in the US or Canada, they're already discounted every day of the week. Significant discounts. So we're not talking $5, $10. We're talking $25, $30 off. Some of these really expensive ones, you could save quite a bit of money. It's the same cert that you would get on CompTIA's site, but you get it for less money. That's a win-win. That's a no-brainer in my mind, but not everybody's in the US or Canada, and I can understand that as well. You might have to go to the CompTIA website to buy yours. They don't generally have a standard discounting program at CompTIA. If anything, about this time of the year is about when they tend to change the pricing every year. So if anything, at the beginning of the year, prices tend to go up because they never go down. The prices never go down that direction. They always go up. Sometimes it might be a $4 change. It might be $4 more expensive, or it might be $10 more expensive. It's not usually dramatic changes to the pricing, but they usually adjust the pricing at the very first or maybe at the beginning of the second calendar quarter of the year. They changed it a little bit in recent years because COVID set the calendar into a tailspin. But traditionally, they've always tended to do it in February. I've not seen those changes this year. They don't tell me about them until they happen. So we'll make that happen. Now, whenever that happens, we'll know about it. We can, of course, give you a perspective there. But there are no standard times or dates or anything like that. And if you're just looking for a discount, we already have it. It's already on our site. That's my very selfish type of discount there. As far as what CompTIA does on their site, I'm not involved in the process. I couldn't tell you. Traditionally, they have not, however. Next question. Let's keep going through this list. I do like saving a little bit of money now and then, though. That's always a good idea. Let's keep going through your questions. Such great questions in here, by the way. Thank you for submitting these. A lot of questions in here about getting a lot of hands-on, doing hands-on. Can I get more hands-on? I think hands-on is a great way to learn. You're sort of taking these nebulous ideas that you've been learning either in a video or a book, and you're applying some of them in a practical way. There is not a ton of that in the network in the Security Plus exam, as I've already mentioned, there's no command lines in the exam objectives. If you look at A Plus or Network Plus, there's a lot of command lines you need to know. You don't have those in Security Plus. So the type of hands-on things that you would be doing would be to support the topics that you were already learning as part of the exam objectives. And I think those might be useful to do. So, for example, on our site, I have the CompTIA CertMaster Labs. That's a great hands-on, and it takes you through a number of different topics and across the entire set of exam objectives. If you ever want to find those on my site and you're interested in those, you got to go here. Oh, look, Bear Camp. That sounds great. If you go to the Security Plus pull-down menu or any of these pull-down menus for the different certifications, and it says Start Security Plus here, not only, of course, are the Professor Messer Security Plus training materials here, but if you scroll down a bit, we've got the CompTIA Premium, so the CertMaster Learn, the books, the practice, and there's the labs right there, the interactive lab packs from CompTIA. These are real-world, hands-on, virtual machine, stepping through the different security topics that you might be interested in doing to get more hands-on about how those work. And I demonstrate some of them on my website. And of course, you could step through and see more about them on the CompTIA site as well. These are discounted over CompTIA. For example, on the CompTIA website, they're $210. On my site, they're $189. So and a little more, I did not count this right. I need to update this because now it used to be only $10 you're saving. Now you save even more. I need to update that page itself so that it has the right pricing on it. But there you go. You've got now choices for the different materials you need. Not everybody needs labs, but if you do, there's a number of options out there. And I think, as I mentioned, in a number of different study groups, I think getting hands-on is an important part of the process. I always tell you, you really need 4 different elements to really study the best for these exams. I think you need a good video course. We have one of those. I think you need a good book. We recommend a couple of those. We have certainly the CompTIA book on our website as well, discounted. I think having labs and hands-on is an important part of that. And we recommend that for the A+, the Network Plus, Security Plus, and really almost any certification. And then lastly, do some practice questions. Practice questions can be extremely useful as well. So make sure you get as many of those different study materials as you can to be able to bring everything back home and kind of put all of these pieces together. Not everybody needs all of them. Some people don't need labs. Some people don't need a book. Some people don't want videos. It just depends on how you like to study. But all 4 of those together, I think, give you the best possibility at learning the things you need to learn so that you can pass this certification exam. But you need to make the decisions on what study materials would work best for you. We offer everything on our site, but you can decide which ones really do make the most sense and find the right mix, the right balance for your study process. More questions. We got more here to break through all of these. A lot of folks are, there were a number of odd questions that came through. Some people were saying, hey, this study group's the same as the one we did in January. Nope. It's all different questions every month. And trust me, I write all new questions every month. I am very aware that every study group is very different. Why would you attend the same study group every month anyway? It really does need to be different. So absolutely an important part of that. Let's keep going through your list of questions that you have submitted. Got a lot to go through. The questions, especially with Security Plus, are many and varied. There's so much that is in the world of IT security. So we really are stepping through and working through the details of these. Unfortunately, the number of questions have come through about topics on how to use third-party security tools. So if you've ever used a SIM, or you've used a vulnerability scanner, or you've used a next-generation firewall from another company, all of those devices from different companies all work very differently. And although I have extremely detailed knowledge about certain ones of those that I've used through the years, that is a very good example of how you might want to go to the manufacturer of those tools for the best support. I'm not a very good support person for any of those tools because I got other stuff going on. So I would recommend if you have a detailed question about a nuance of a product or a tool and how it operates in a particular environment during a particular scenario to create a thing, go to that organization. I think that's the way to do it. And of course, stick to the exam objectives. If it's in the objectives, you need to know it. If it's not in the objectives, you don't need to know it for your Security Plus exam. Let's keep going through this list. This is some great questions that you have submitted, by the way. Thank you for doing that. The questions that you have there, for the folks that are, some folks in the question in, are you still live? I think so. I'm not sure, but I do believe so. How would I know though? Really? Now we're getting really outside the box just a little bit. Let's try to get back to Security Plus questions real quick and break these things down. There are a lot in this, in the questions that have been submitted to kind of parse through. For those of you that I mentioned earlier, and I got a number of questions about this, for those of you that asked earlier about the discounts available for vouchers. And I mentioned on our website, we have those voucher discounts available at professormesser.com/vouchers. This is really an opportunity for me to say that again, but this is the page where you can get discounted vouchers on the Professor Messer website. These are available for people that are in the US, Canada, or US territory. So that's just sort of a limitation on where these, because the vouchers are locked to a geography. So it's not just me, I'm only taking Canadian dollars and US dollars. That's not what's going on. The challenge is that these vouchers themselves will only work if you are physically located in the US, Canada, or US territory. So you're in Puerto Rico, you're in Guam, you're in the Mariana Islands, you're in any one of those US territories or in any of the Canadian provinces. So that's why I present them that way. So if you're outside of that geography, I don't currently provide vouchers for you on my website, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll be able to do that sometime in the future. But these are available for those folks who need those vouchers. If you're outside US, Canada, or US territory, you'll need to either find a local CompTIA partner in your country or your geography, or you can buy the vouchers directly on the CompTIA website that are priced and structured for your local currency, which can be useful. If you are outside, everything on my site is done in US dollars. So I would highly recommend that if you're not in the US and you're buying it in US dollars, make sure you check with your credit card company so that there are no additional fees. Usually your credit card company will automatically perform the currency conversion for you. Some credit card companies put additional charges on top of that for international purchases. Some don't. So you need to check with your bank before you do that and be able to make that work through the details. So some folks in the chat room are asking about exam objectives, and they say the exam objectives list these things. Should I also know about these other things that aren't listed in the exam objectives? Class, no, it's not in the exam objectives. You don't need to know it. So that should be your watchword. That should be the common thing. If you're ever wondering, do I need to know this for the exam? You should always go back to the exam objectives. Go to this list. This is your holy book. This is your detailed guide. This tells you everything you need to know, and it doesn't give you anything you don't need to know. So if you are on this list and you're thinking, what, don't I need to know a lot of command lines? I should go learn all of these security command line tools. That's interesting and certainly a lot of fun to play at the command line, but none of that will be asked of you on the exam because it's not in this list. Stick to this list. So I think that's a very good example of where if you're in the world of studying for CompTIA exams, CompTIA is one of the few people out there that give you a detailed, bulleted breakdown of everything you need to know. Microsoft doesn't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. Amazon doesn't do this. Red Hat doesn't do this. Nobody else does this level of detail. Take advantage of this. It's a gift they have provided to you. This gives you everything you need to know and nothing that you don't need to know. So if you're ever wondering and you're concerned, I get these questions a lot where people will email me and say, I know it doesn't say this in the exam objectives, but do I need to know it? I don't even need to look. It's not in the objectives. You don't need to know it. That's it. It's that simple. Plus, keep in mind, they stay so close to this list. They stay so laser focused on just these topics that if you know every single one of these topics, you will crush this exam. You will pass with no problem. So learn all of these bullets. The argument people have with this, and I've seen it often, this is what they come back with, is there is a paragraph in this document that says, this is what the lawyers have added. Please note, the lists of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Oh, Professor Messer told you wrong. Other examples of technologies, processes, or tasks pertaining to each objective may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this document. This is the lazy out that I see all the time. The problem is that although they have given themselves a broad view of this, although CompTIA has told you that they could go outside this list, and they've said this may be included on the exam, in reality, they never go outside this list. So even though they say we could go outside this list, in practical terms, they never go outside this list. Even if they asked you one question outside this list. Let's say they did. Let's say during the exam, they asked you a question about a topic that was not listed in the exam objectives. It's one question. You got every other question right because you already knew all of the objectives that were here. So that's my approach to this, is stick to the objectives. As long as you stick to the objectives, you're fine. That is the really important part of this. And if you're somebody who is trying to work their way through this list, I think that's an important consideration. The study process is the most important part. Taking the exam should just be falling right into the answers because you already know the answers. So really, this is your preparation. The exam should be just a simple process at the end. Stick to this list. This is everything you need to know. It's your checklist that you should reference at the beginning of your studies. I would also recommend you go back to this list at the end of your studies because this will tell you what you really need to know and what you don't. And if you go to a topic here and you think, well, I'm looking at this list and it says change management, some of the technical implications are legacy applications. I didn't really read up on that a lot. How do legacy applications have a technical implication to the change management process? I need to read up a little bit more on that. So this could be a fantastic checklist for you that will really help point out at the end of your studies, do I need to go back and refresh myself a little bit, or do I really know that topic well? And once you know all the topics, go take your exam. You're done. You're in great shape. So definitely consider that if you're somebody who is working through the exam topics, you're trying to figure out the specifics of the exam. You can't take anything into the exam room. You can't write anything down before going into the exam. The only thing you could bring is your eyes and your brain. That's it. Everything else is left outside the room. Once you get into the room, you can write things down that you might remember. That time is taking off and counting down off of your time available on the exam. So I would recommend you lock everything up in your brain. And when you walk into the exam, you work on getting it all out there on the page and understanding everything you happen to need. So if you're in a live situation, they usually will give you a laminated page and a whiteboard pen with a very bad tip on it that will barely work. So they do that. Check your pen before you walk in the room. And if they've given you one of these that are used for a football poster board, you need to hand that in and say, can you give me something with a finer tip on it? Then when you get in there, you can write on that document. And at the end, they just erase it and you're on your way. If you're online, it's an online whiteboard Let me see if I can bring up the online whiteboard in this list. It is the OnView is the name of the software used for this. And if you search for OnView whiteboard, OnView is one word, ONVUE. Here it is. The OnView. Let's allow and continue. So OnView is the software they use for this exam. And if you Google OnView whiteboard, they present you with this page with all the options you have, and they give you an example of what the whiteboard looks like here. So you can type in here. It's just a whiteboard that's available. They have some functionality that you could write on the screen. I don't know why you would do this during your exam, but you can bring this up and write on things with your mouse. Don't do that. Just write with the up here in the text-based part of the whiteboard. Use that part, and I think you're fine. And that sticks with you from question to question throughout the exam. Makes it a little bit easier for remembering things, putting it in this list, and then it's always there throughout your exam. That, of course, takes time. So time management, incredibly important on this exam. Make sure you use some of those time management functions. And there's a clock at the top of the screen. Always be aware of how much time you have left. Managing your time is almost as important as knowing the content. Because if you run out of time, that doesn't help you. If you knew everything, but you weren't able to get all that onto the document, into the test, then that doesn't help you very much. So watch that clock. It is incredibly important. The idea behind Security Plus and the idea of getting this exam is one that covers both sort of a knowledge of how these things work and a knowledge of actually working with them. And that's why I think the balance of watching the videos, getting a good book, stepping through labs, and then going through the practice questions can really give you a very good idea of where your shortcomings might be and where the topics are that you might want to work on a little bit more. So don't discount the exam objectives. They are a valuable, valuable tool. And unfortunately, so many people have come to me after their exam and said, I didn't pass. I'm going to have to take the exam again. And they asked me a question about NGFWs. Where did that come from? I said, well, it's in your exam objectives. And they'll say, what are exam objectives? Like there was an opportunity there before you went into the exam that you would have known every possible thing that could have been asked of you. It's your secret. This is your superpower. So use those objectives. They are incredibly valuable. They can really sometimes be the difference between you passing the exam and not passing the exam, which is why I talk about it so much. It's such a valuable tool. I wouldn't mention it unless I've used these myself, found them incredibly valuable. I think it's something that can help you as well. Well, we have gone through yet another set of questions in our live stream study group and in our after show. Hopefully that's giving you some perspectives on things you might want to work on with Security Plus, some ideas about what you could do with Security Plus once you earn the certification, and some study tips that might help get you over that hump and into the exam room and come out of that with a successful score. I hope this is something that's been valuable for you as well. We do one of these study groups every month. Of course, our entire archive is available in our YouTube channel. There's a playlist for all of our previous Security Plus study groups. And next month will be another Security Plus study group with brand new questions as we do every month. Make sure you check the calendar to know when the next live event will be at professormesser.com/calendar. Thank you so much for joining us on the study group. We will see you next time on our Security Plus study group. Thanks, everybody.